her lawyer is wanting mediation, but I don't want to give away anymore. What are your thoughts? So my thoughts are this. When you go to a mediation with a narcissist, yeah, and you can settle a case in mediation with a narcissist, by the way. A lot of people say don't bother mediation or don't bother trying to settle a case with a narcissist. It never works. And every time I see that, I think, no, that's not true. I've had many, many narcissists settle in mediation. But the key is that when you go to mediation with a narcissist, you can't just walk in and think you're going to talk it through and resolve differences, because there's one key element that's missing when you're dealing with a narcissist in mediation, and that is they don't actually really want to settle the case because they get narcissistic supply from jerking you around. So how do you get them to settle a case in mediation? Well, you have to have a super strong strategy, and you have to have created enough leverage that when you get to that mediation, they feel motivated and squeezed and incentivized into settling the case. That's what I teach people how to do with my SLAY system and my SLAY program. Strategy, leverage, anticipate what the narcissist is going to do, and focus on your case and you, and creating an offensive position. So, but leverage is really, really key. So the mistake that people make a lot of times when they go into a mediation with a narcissist is that they think that they're dealing with, a reasonable person, or you just think, oh, it's perfunctory, the court's making me do it, so let's just get this over with, and hopefully the mediator will be able to help, and hopefully the lawyers will be able to help, and it just ends up being a really super expensive conversation that doesn't really get you anywhere. So yes, you should mediate, and here's why. Because when you go to mediation, if you get them to sign a settlement agreement in mediation, then the case is done. If you go to court and you go before a judge and the judge hands down a decision, then that decision is appealable. So you could win 100% of everything that you want in court and still not be done, because they can appeal that. And even worse, they can file a motion to stay the orders, meaning whatever you won in that final judgment is just going to be held in limbo, and you're not going to get to enjoy the fruits of that until after the appeal is done. Appeals take a long time and they're very expensive. Now, oftentimes appeals aren't successful. Most of the time, people who appeal don't prevail. I mean, it's like a 15% win rate or something if you're appealing. But even so, you're still dealing with this person. So it is definitely better to try to get them to sign an agreement. But don't go back and forth between your attorneys to try to get them to sign an agreement. You definitely want them to sign in mediation when all these people are around them, the mediator, the other lawyers, because one of the things about narcissists is that they desperately do not want to look bad in front of people that they respect, and especially the judge. So if you get to mediation and you've got all your leverage ready to go, and all of these bits of information that they're realizing is going to come out if they end up in front of a judge, or that they might end up with a bad result or something like that, that's how you squeeze them into settling a case at mediation. So I do recommend that you try to mediate again. And it's kind of a long way of answering your question, but I thought it was a really good one and a great opportunity for me to tell you why I think mediation is a good idea, even if you're dealing with a narcissist, and sometimes especially if you're dealing with a narcissist, because that's where your leverage is going to be the best. Because all narcissists are driven by supply, and a big piece of that supply is how they look in front of people. So looking bad in front of a judge, or maybe having information come out about them that's public, that they don't want to come out about them, is a really, really nice form of kind of ethically manipulating the manipulator into signing an agreement. So I call it an ethical manipulation, because you're just taking information that you have and using it against them. And all narcissists are liars and do things that you can definitely use against them. So, you're just trying to get back to what's fair. A lot of people say, I don't want to fight. I don't want to spend a lot of money. If you feel that way, then you've got to create leverage. Now, if you're divorcing a narcissist and you're getting ready to go mediate a case, or even if you're not divorcing a narcissist, but you are mediating a case with the narcissist, maybe it's a former business partner or something, all the same rules will apply here. And so the very first thing that you're going to want to think about is be way over prepared. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make in mediations. And what happens is they think, well, we're just having a conversation. We're just sitting down. Let's just see what they have to say. I'll just tell them what I have to say. And, we'll just take it from there and hopefully we'll get it resolved. Big mistake. You definitely need to have a very clear strategy. You need to have your leverage ready to go. You need to be anticipating what they're going to say. And you need to be focusing on you. Those are that's my acronym for SLAY, by the way: strategy, leverage, anticipate, and focus on you. And you want to slay that negotiation. And so be over prepared, prepare as if you're going to trial. You need to have everything ready to go. Your research has been done. You know what your position is. You know what their position is. You're anticipating what their position is going to be. And you have your arguments ready to go. You have your valuations, you have your appraisals, you have the supporting documentation for all of the information. You have an asset and liability exhibit ready to go. You have your arguments ready to go. You have your first offer ready to go. And it better be a whole lot more than what you're going to be willing to accept, right? So you have all of that ready to go. And that means that you're over prepared. And that means that you'll be ready. Okay, so that's step number one. Okay, so step number two is be ready with leverage. And a lot of people say to me, what does leverage mean? How do you get that? And what leverage really just is, kind of like a squeeze that you can put on the other person to get them to be motivated and incentivized to want to come to the table and have a conversation with you. And it's different for every person. So it's kind of hard to say, oh, this is it. But what you do is you look at what is motivating this person the most. Is it money? Is it power? Is it controlling you? Is it that they want time with the kids? Is it that which usually when you're dealing with a narcissist, it's not time with the kids. They'll say it's time with the kids, but they don't actually really care about the kids because they don't care about anybody but themselves. So just be aware of that one. But it might be, that they look bad. They don't want to look bad. It may be that they want to move on and be with another person. It may be that they want you back or something. And you kind of use that to your advantage too. Some people don't like the idea of creating leverage because they say, I don't want to fight. And, most everybody who comes into my office says, I don't want to fight. I just want what's fair. Well, everybody has a different idea of what's fair. And that's what happens. And that's why people end up fighting. Right. So, and especially when you're dealing with a narcissist, because they have these grandiose ideas of what's fair and they bolster their contributions to things and minimize yours. So, figuring out what their leverage is going to be really, really important as well. So that's number two. And number three is don't stay in the same room. A lot of times we start off in the same room, but I really highly suggest that you don't stay in the same room. Sometimes it's easier for the mediator to just give their opening spiel like one time, what the day is about and all about the mediator. I've practiced law for X number of years and I've been mediating for this many years and here's how many mediations I've done. And, it saves them from having to say it twice. But I don't recommend staying in the same room with someone who can push your buttons, who knows how to get under your skin, and they're really, really good at it. And even, as self-disciplined as you are, and going back to step number one, the more you're prepared, the less emotional you'll be, so the easier the day will be for you. So definitely make sure that you're over prepared. But staying in the same room will just probably cause you headache and heartache, and you probably won't settle your case if you do stay in the same room anyway. So we do what we call caucusing, which means that the mediator goes back and forth, and you're in one room, either by yourself if you don't have representation, or you have your lawyer there with you if you have representation. But then the mediator just goes back and forth. And what's great about that is the mediator can kind of work as a filter. They'll come back and present information to you in a very neutral way, without all of the drama and without the emotion involved and without the manipulation piece involved, and all that sort of thing. And especially if that narcissist has been a bully and controlling, you really don't want that, because they will probably trigger you. Okay. So step number three would be or tip number three would be not to stay in the same room. Okay, so tip number four is to not bring other people with you unless you've cleared them ahead of time with the other side. You probably won't be allowed to keep that person there. The mediator has a duty to disclose who's in the other room. And, if the other side objects to having that person there, then you're going to have to make that person leave. So, I would definitely not bring someone unless you've cleared it ahead of time. Unless it's somebody who's involved in the process. I mean, obviously, if it's a forensic accountant or a custody evaluator or somebody who's involved with the process, then they're going to be allowed to stay. But anybody else will be kicked out of the room. Which of these ideas have you liked the best so far? Just drop a link in the comment, or just drop a little comment below and say, oh, I like this one so far the best. But stay with me, because the best ideas are coming. Okay, number five, I talked about this a little bit in number one when I talked about being over-prepared, but number five is having your first offer ready to go. And it should definitely be way, way more than what you're gonna be willing to settle for, because, narcissist is going to think that they got the best of you. So, decide ahead of time what you're going to be willing to part with, and then, put that into the offer. Also decide ahead of time what your choke point is going to be. I've had a client one time call it the vomit point, but that's okay. Basically, at what point are you going to stand up and say, I've had enough? And a lot of that is going to depend on what the law provides. So, if the law provides that you got permanent alimony after a certain number of years of marriage, and you definitely know a court's going to order that, and the other side says, I'm not paying you a penny of alimony, and that's never going to happen, and I'll wait for the judge to order me to pay you. Well, okay, then maybe don't settle that piece of the case. And you can settle parts of cases. Some lawyers don't like to do that. Some do, but you can just take the parts to the judge that you haven't settled. Okay, so, but once you have gotten a resolution, and let's say you've given away what you've already decided ahead of time that you were willing to part with anyway, act like that was like the worst thing in the world for you, like you just cut off your right arm in order to give that person that thing. Because if they think that you got the best of them, or it was okay, you didn't care about giving that up anyway, then they're not going to settle, because they want to feel like they got the best of you. Unfortunately, you kind of have to check your ego at the door when you're dealing with a narcissist like this. Okay, and the last tip is something I've alluded to before, and if you're a regular viewer of my videos, you know that what I'm going to say, right? And that is to keep your emotions in check. It's so important, because as soon as you lose your cool, as soon as you are crying, screaming, yelling, screaming back, calling them names, getting down into the dirt with them, then they know that they have you. One of the things that drives a narcissist the most crazy is when you aren't moved by their antics and you don't respond. They can't stand it, because narcissists want attention. They want to know that they have control over you. So stay non-emotional, And of course, it's much easier to do if you're in separate rooms. Let's dive into unmasking narcissists, 4 Jedi-like tactics to crush narcissists in mediation. What do we start with here? We start with powerful body language. Powerful body language. If you walk into a negotiation and a mediation and you are fearful of them, they can tell, they can read you, they can read that body language on you. And I want you, even if you are sweating, even if you are scared, even if you are like dying, here are some ways that you can show up for yourself in a way that looks powerful, right? So remember, we're on our mission to right this ship, to course correct. I talk about step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free, right? And if you haven't heard me say this before, it's step 1 is where you stop that conditioning, stop that retreating. You're going to start walking forward instead of backward. And this is where you're going to start drawing boundaries and start doing some things that are uncomfortable. Small changes, but pivotal. Step 2, make a U-turn, where you're going to start turning things around, starting to create leverage, start planning for negotiations and shifting that dynamic of power. And then step 3 is breaking free, where you start walking forward and you start presenting your offers. You actually start speaking. You actually start reclaiming your sense of self, slowly but surely, knowing that somewhere inside of yourself that you never left. And that's that really authentic power, which totally beats their fake power every single time. How can you have some nonverbal communication, that power body language? You walk in, you've got eye contact. You look at them and you go, you know what? I'm not afraid of you. I'm here. I'm looking at you. And you're going, hello, I see you. I'm here. And you go, you stick out your hand, you shake their hand, depending on who it is that you're dealing with. You're showing them, I'm strong, I'm powerful. Confident handshake. And that's the only appropriate expression of touch. Now, I'm talking about this. This is not if you are in a domestic violence situation. You do not need to do that, obviously. For the most part, I think that in a mediation situation, you should be in separate rooms. I think that you should do something that I call caucusing. Other than for the opening, let the mediator do their little opening spiel. Hi, I'm the mediator. This is your day of opportunity. This is who I am, blah, 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 blah. That's all you need to do. Separate rooms for the rest of the time. Other than that, you can just walk in. I'm powerful. Attention to all of you who have ever felt trapped by a narcissist. Are you struggling in a relationship with a narcissist and feeling powerless or paranoid and not sure what to do? It is time to take back control and flip the script on their game. I want to introduce to you the ultimate solution to breaking free from the grip of narcissistic manipulation. Join me for a groundbreaking webinar called The 3 Must-Have Secrets to Communicating with a Narcissist. Hi, my name is Rebecca Zung, and I've been recognized by U.S. News as one of the best lawyers in America, and I'm a globally recognized narcissist negotiation expert, and I spent years studying and mastering the art of negotiating with narcissists. I know firsthand the devastation these relationships can cause, but I also know the key to regaining your power, and I know how to shift the dynamic with these high conflict personalities. In this exclusive webinar, you will discover the 3 essential secrets to go from feeling paralyzed and feeling like a victim to becoming victorious. This isn't just theory. These are proven techniques that I have used to help literally thousands of people go from feeling powerless to feeling victorious and actually breaking free from the grip of narcissistic control.
Hi, my name is Heather, and I have never felt so compelled to give a review as I do now for attorney Rebecca Zung. The strength I had gained and the confidence that I had gained from Rebecca actually allowed me to get a different self-worth and presence in myself. And due to that, I was actually able to pick myself up within, made tremendous difference. And, she has literally changed the situation for me and mostly given me a sense of presence, strength, self-confidence, and well-being that I'm just so grateful for her.
Hi, I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. I know Rebecca Zung. She interviewed me, but I'm also aware of all of her products. What she's doing is saving people who are going through the dark night of the soul. This can be the turning point for you.
Don't let that narcissist have that grip on your life any longer. It's time to rewrite your history and take charge of your future and unlock that power within you. Sign up now for 3 must-have secrets to communicating with narcissists and embark on a transformational journey toward your freedom, toward your empowerment. Break free from the grasp of that narcissist and create the life that you deserve. Join me, attorney Rebecca Zung, narcissist negotiation expert, and let's rewrite your narrative together. Register now at slay.rebeccazung.com and let's take the first step toward your life of victory. Commanding posture, commanding presence. I'm strong. I stand in my power. Even if your breath is being taken away, you stand there. You show you are not backing down. Remember, this is from the moment that you walk into that room. And even if you are on a Zoom video, by the way, and that camera is turned on, you are sitting in your seat and you are sitting tall and you are showing that you are not backing down. And by the way, same with your tone of voice. Narcissists see if you're scared at all, they feel that. They know that they still got this control over you. You want to show that they don't have any power over you anymore. As far as your personal appearance goes, you're going to want to wear clothes that make you feel confident, that present that you feel confident, that you feel respect for yourself. Wear something that makes you feel like $1,000,000, that makes you feel powerful, that makes you feel like you know what you're doing. Whoever the most powerful version is of yourself, that's the person that is showing up. Your body posture. You're not slouching. You're showing to that narcissist and everybody else in the room too, that you are not somebody to be beaten, that you are a winner, that you're telling everybody in that room how you're carrying yourself. Before you even open your mouth, they know who you are when you walk into that room. You stand up straight. Body posture can be used to determine a person's level of respect as soon as they walk into a room. So bad posture, like slouching, can be an indicator of a lot of different things, including whether or not somebody is bored or involved in a conversation or whatever. So, make sure that you are sitting there and they know that you know who you are right from the beginning. Personal space, narcissists can be extremely sensitive about their personal space. So be very careful about that when you're dealing with whoever this narcissistic person is. Be hyper aware of that personal space issue. And you just remember that your hand gestures, whatever it is that you're doing, you're very purposeful about it. You're not fidgeting, you're not playing with your hair, you're not finger tapping, you're not hand wringing, you're not twisting your rings. You want to avoid looking nervous. You want to avoid looking anything but totally confident. You want to make sure that you are not slouching. You're not sitting in the chair like, bored or whatever. You sit in the chair in a powerful way. And you can actually use some of the power body language moves that there are out there, like steepling shows that, you are confident. You're making a point over here, or you put your arm over the chair drape shows confidence, openness, that sort of thing. Leaning into a conversation when you're sitting in a chair. Avoid jiggling your feet, avoid jiggling your legs too much, because then that can make you appear to be nervous. So those are just some things that you can do for looking confident and strong from a body language point of view. All right. So that is the first thing for your Jedi power in your mediation. The second thing that you can do is be prepared with your leverage. Make sure it's something that's going to threaten a source of narcissistic supply that is going to be more important for them to keep than the supply that they get from jerking you around. Remember, I talk about diamond level supply versus coal level supply. Make sure that you remember that. That is going to be very, very, very important when looking at how to deal with narcissists. And I have a whole video on how to create leverage with narcissists, which you're definitely going to want to check out. When you're dealing with narcissists, there's a couple of different types of narcissistic supply, and understanding those forms of supply is going to be really, really important. Understanding strategy, understanding leverage, understanding anticipate. My whole SLAY method is going to be very, very critical. And having two options for them, the option that you want them to take, and then the option that they're not going to want to take, and having that neutral mediator present it to them is going to be really, really critical as well. And if you don't have my Crush My Negotiation Prep worksheet, which is a free 15-page e-booklet, would highly recommend that you get that at winmynegotiation.com. It will help you so much in preparing to crush them in mediation. It's free. It will help you. Make sure you go get it. It's not one of those freebies that doesn't really do anything. It's a freebie that's actually super substantive. So make sure you go get that right now. And just put in the comments right now, I'm going to win. I'm here to win, which is what you're going to do, because what follows after I am is your order that you are placing to the universe, and you're here to win. And that's what's happening, right? So make sure that you are here to win. The next thing is be prepared to walk away. Be prepared to go to trial if you need to. Understand what your choke point is. Know what your risks are. When you go in there, if you're not prepared to go to trial or walk away, then they know they have you. Understand that you're ready to take option A or option B. Be so ready to go, either one is fine with me. Your choice. You want to control that narrative. You want to be in the position of power. So you've got to have done your homework. You want to be the one telling that mediator what's going to go down. And so you got to be prepared with how it's going to go down. You want to have your offer 1 ready to go, offer 2 ready to go. You want to know how this is going to shake out, and you want to know what your choke point is, what your walk away point is before you get there, because the day is going to be stressful. And by the way, you need a lot of support around this. So, this whole idea of dealing with a narcissist when you're negotiating and all of this whole process is stressful. So, I hope that you have the kind of support that you need. Please join my private Facebook group, Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung, and make sure that you get therapy. And if you don't have access to therapy we have a sponsor on this channel, which is BetterHelp, and you can go to betterhelp.com/Rebecca Zung to get access to that. It is a sponsor on this channel, which means that we receive commissions. You don't pay any extra. We just want you to have access to help and support that you can trust. Next is you need to be prepared to make them sign the agreement. So what I would do is I would have an agreement in Word format or even Google Docs or something like that, ready to go with what it is that you want, but ready to be edited as well. It's going to get changed. It's going to be obviously go through many different formats. But if you have kind of the basics there, the boilerplate language and all the other things sort of spelled out so that all you have to do is change the terms as you go along, then it can be just ready to hit print and get them to sign, because they will change their mind about it before they even get to the parking lot. If you let them leave and you think you've got a deal and all you have to do is type up the terms, they will have changed their minds. You will never pin them down. It's like, how do you solve a problem like Maria? How do you pin a wave and how do you catch a wave and pin it down? You're never going to get them to sign because they get off on jerking you around and playing this game with you, having you all over the place. And many times they find a lawyer who plays the same games. And you know who's paying the price for all of that? You're paying for a lawyer for a 15,000 iterations of an agreement for the next several weeks. And then you never end up getting anything signed anyway. And meanwhile, your emotions are all over the place and you never got anything signed because you thought you had an agreement. You thought you had a deal at the end of mediation, but you didn't. And then you end up having to go to trial anyway. So if you want to make sure you get a deal done, have an agreement ready to go. So if you're dealing with a narcissist, be it a covert narcissist, a grandiose narcissist, or a malignant narcissist, they engage in all kinds of behaviors, even while you are just in a relationship with them. They're gaslighting you, they're lying to you, they're manipulating you, perhaps even being abusive. More than likely, they're being abusive. Some are sneakier at it than others. Covert narcissists in particular are very sneaky at it. And so if you are dealing with a covert narcissist, I have several videos on covert narcissists, including why covert narcissists are dangerous and the covert passive aggressive narcissist. And you're going to want to check out those videos for sure if you're dealing with covert narcissists. But whatever kind of narcissist you're dealing with, they are being their narcissist selves the entire time that you're in a relationship with them. So there are three phases to a narcissistic relationship. It's love bombing, devaluing, and discarding. And remember that the phases of the relationship don't actually happen in a linear fashion. They happen at the same time sometimes. They can be devaluing you while they're love bombing you. And in fact, there was a study done by a psychologist with monkeys that showed that if monkeys were given a reward for doing something good every single time, nothing happened in their brain. But if they were only given a reward intermittently, variably, where the monkeys couldn't predict when they were going to get this reward, the dopamine levels in their brain actually rose to the level of someone on cocaine. And that's what happens with a relationship with narcissists. They go back and forth. The narcissists go back and forth between love bombing and devaluing and love bombing and devaluing. And so you are left with almost being addicted to, in a physiological way, to wanting their praise, to wanting that love bomb, because they start out so charming and they really try to set themselves up to be the perfect person for you and hold out all these things that they're going to do for you, or even do things for you right at that time. I mean, if you ever watched the Dirty John miniseries, you recall that guy was just setting himself to be up to be perfect for this successful single businesswoman. He was getting her dry cleaning and making smoothies for her in the morning and all these things at the same time that he was isolating her from her family and turning people against her. So, they go through these phases of the relationship. So, what happens when you are doing battle with a narcissist is they just become that same person, but on steroids. So, it's so much worse. They turn up the heat because, unfortunately, for narcissists, you're either for them or you're against them. They need an endless amount of supply. And if you are cutting off that supply to them, then they just see you as the enemy. And for those of you who watch my videos on a regular basis, you know that I've had to work 2 covert narcissists out of my life, and it was not an easy thing. It wasn't husbands, but it was people that were close to me and close enough to do serious damage and cause lots and lots of trauma. And, I'm telling you that if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. Narcissists have a symbiotic relationship with empaths. And, narcissists see that empaths have the qualities that they want. And empaths, we just think that we can love everybody back to health, and, that we have enough love to give. And it just ends up being this black hole. And so they literally, they're often called energy vampires or leeches or parasites or whatever, but they literally suck the life out of you. And it's almost like death by 1,000 cuts. And so when you go to do battle with a narcissist, they're literally turning up the heat because now you're the enemy. Now you no longer have any value for them. So there's no, like, a reasonable person, those of us who are in reasonable land, we think, oh, we can just walk away and wish each other well, and we'll come up with an agreement that's reasonable. And hey, the law provides for certain things, and depending on what kind of battle you're doing with a narcissist. But you can't, that's not how it goes with a narcissist. So if you're getting ready to do battle, or you're in the trenches of doing battle with a narcissist, there are a few things that you can do to beat them at their own game and preserve your own sanity along the way. The first thing is, don't allow them to disrespect you. When you allow them to disrespect you, you're basically giving them permission to do that. And they know how to push your buttons, let me tell you. I mean, especially if you've been in a long-term relationship with this person, they've studied you, they know exactly what your weaknesses are, and so that's where they're going to go. They're going right there to try to make you look as bad as possible. Everything you say or do is going to be turned against you, used against you, twisted, manipulated. So what you're going to have to do is just maintain your own level of dignity, maintain your own level of respect, and demand respect from them. If they are screaming, yelling, trying to talk to you in a way that's overly emotional, and they're not in control, they want you to be out of control too, because they get supply, they get narcissistic supply by seeing you squirm. So by just maintaining that, hey, we're not going to have this conversation, you're not being respectful to me, this is not productive, we'll have this conversation when you can be respectful to me. Same thing if they are lighting you up in text messages or lighting you up in emails, and saying all sorts of disrespectful things. You can just simply respond and say, I disagree with what you're saying. Please do not speak to me that way. It is disrespectful. And, and then respond to the parts of it that you might have to respond to, like, what time are you picking up the kids or something like that. But other than that, you're not going to get into the trenches with them and sling that same sort of mud. You're going to demand respect from them, and you're going to condition them that this is how it's going to go. If they want you to interact with them, they're going to have to respect you. And it's going to drive them insane when you do that, believe me. Okay, the next thing that you can do is document, document, document. And we cannot say this enough. Those of us who are in this field and professionals in this area, you just never know what's going to end up being your leverage. And when you're dealing with narcissists, you have to have a super strong strategy and you have to be able to create leverage. And, I often hear people ask me, what is leverage? What does that look like? And leverage can be a smoking gun, like the one thing that for sure the narcissist doesn't want anyone to know. Um, or it could be something like that the narcissist is more motivated to resolve your differences than you are. Or it can be an accumulation of things. It can be, you know, 15 different text messages that show that they're a liar, or and you create an exhibit that shows that. It could be that they didn't show up for picking up the kids on time 20 times in a row, or they changed the schedule every single time that they were supposed to take the kids or whatever. But, it could be any accumulation of those things. And so it's really, really important to do that documentation, even if it seems mundane. Just keep the app open on your phone, the Notes app, or there's apps where you can actually they pay, to have a documentation feature or whatever. But basically, you just don't really know what's going to be the pattern that you're going to be able to bring out, or what's going to be that leverage. And, for sure, the leverage is always going to be around what is their biggest motivation, which is, the one thing they don't want to come out. It's going to be around their ego, because the thing about narcissists is, they're just always in this mode of self-preservation. They're actually very easy to figure out. And narcissists are the most afraid, most scared little personalities on the planet. They have fragile egos because they have no sense of inner value. All of their value comes from the external. So when you are looking at your documentation and figuring out what your leverage is, you're going to want to think about what is their biggest motivation. What is it that they really don't want brought out? And what is it that's going to make them look bad? Because narcissists do not want to look bad, especially in front of people that they really respect. So if somebody is involved that they really respect, such as a mediator or other lawyers or the judge, especially the judge, they're not going to want to look bad. So document, document, document everything. Okay. You never know when you're going to need it. If this is all sounding really good to you so far, and you are so ready to start doing the things that I'm telling you to do, give me an amen in the comments. Okay. The third thing that you can do is figure out what kind of narcissist you're dealing with and understand what behaviors each one engages in. So some of it is similar. All narcissists engage in certain types of behaviors like gaslighting and manipulation, but they do it in subtly different ways depending on the type of narcissist that you're dealing with, whether it's covert, malignant, or grandiose. And you will want to brush up on the different types of narcissists so that you can figure out what kind you're dealing with, and then find out what behaviors they engage in. And once you do that, then you will expect it. You're going to go, oh, there's that person being that covert narky self. That's what they do. And you won't take it as personally, because you'll just understand that that's the way they act. Okay, so the third thing you can do is figure out what kind of narcissist you're dealing with, brush up on the types of behaviors associated with each narcissist, and then expect them to act like themselves. They don't change. Narcissists do not change. They can pretend like they know, they're very good at pretending. They do know what good behavior looks like. That's how they were able to rope you in the first place, and that's how they parade around the world and get people to think that They're so great. Especially covert narcissists are really, really good at that. But you're going to want to figure out what kind you're dealing with and then not be surprised when they just act like themselves. Okay, the fourth thing is when you are getting ready to ask for something from the narcissist, you're going to want to ask for way more than what you actually want. The narcissist is going to want to feel like they beat you, like they got to you, because they get supply from that. Their egos won't allow you to win, at least on paper. So if you are ready to just give them a certain amount, give away a certain amount that you control, that you decide ahead of time, I'm going to be willing to take this much, or I'll be willing to give up this thing. But act like it's like the one thing you definitely don't want to give up. Because if there's something that's super important to you, then that's the one thing that they're going to want to make sure that you don't get. So you're kind of playing a game here, and I call it ethically manipulating the manipulator. But basically, you're going to want to give them certain things that you kind of decide ahead of time that you were willing to give, and then work back to what you actually want. And then when you get there, you have to act like, oh my God, I can't believe I had to give up so much, and this is just awful, and oh, you really took advantage of me and whatever. But you can just go home and smile and pour your champagne or whatever, and do it in the privacy of your own home after you've won the things that you wanted. And number 5, the last one is, I take it from like this old commercial, never let them see you sweat, but really you never want to let them see you sweat, cry, get emotional, lose control. Then they get supply from that. If you need to, cry in the bathroom, and then come back out, splash water on your face. If you wear makeup and you're a female, whatever, put makeup back on. If you're a guy, just splash water in your face, comb your hair, whatever you need to do to just maintain control, and never let them see that they are getting under your skin. Because as soon as they see that, then they know they have you. If you know you're going to have to interact with them, and let's say it's a school meeting or it's a mediation or something like that, don't get there too early, get there on time. Don't give them opportunities to grab you and try to manipulate you, because that's when they'll start to get under your skin again. Remember what I said at the beginning, these narcissists, they know how to push your buttons. So never let them see you sweat. Psychological tricks to win any negotiation. And you know what? Sometimes the first negotiation that you're doing is in the morning when you wake up, with your own self, with your own self-worth. I always say I can't even leave my own thoughts unsupervised. Okay, so the very first thing is when you're walking into that room to negotiate, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to walk in with power. I want you to walk in with total confidence, because the first thing that people notice is that with that air of power, because that is the first thing that people feel. You tell people what to think. People will think what you tell them to think before you even open your mouth. Use that body language. All right. You walk in with total confidence, and then you use their name, even like being willing to negotiate their place, all of that sort of thing. And by the way, your colors, the colors that you wear, that can matter too. And I actually have a whole video on just that topic, but that's for another whole video, and you can go and check that out. Clothing colors totally can make a difference. Definitely check out that video on that topic. All right. By the way, you're definitely going to want to stay till the end, because, the end is, of course, I'm going to save the best one for the last. All right. Number 2, know your opponent's weaknesses, of course, because you're going to do your research. You're going to do your research. You're going to do your research for yourself. You're going to figure out what are your arguments. You're going to do that. What people don't think about is doing the arguments figuring it out what the other side is going to argue. So many people forget about thinking about what the other side is going to argue as if you are in the other side's shoes. And then this is like so so good, so good, so good. This is a psychological trick that is like the best. The best. You ready for it? When you go in, address their arguments before they even have a chance to bring them up. What you're going to do is you're going to say, I know that you're going to say this, that you're going to argue this. And here's my response. Here's why your argument is crap. So now you've already taken the wind out of their sails. That is such a good psychological trick to win against them in any negotiation. Okay. So now you've walked in with confidence. You've used their name. You've said, hi, hello, I'm here. And you've sat down. You've already said, oh, I know what you're about to argue. You're going to say this. And here's why your argument is total crap. Now, what are they going to do? So that's number 1 and 2. Pretty good, right? I still got 4 more to go. Stay with me. Number three is be completely and totally unflappable no matter what. They can say whatever they want to say. And you're just like, because you know what? They are trying to trigger you, especially those narcissists. They want to trigger you. That is what they want to do so bad. So bad. They try so hard to trigger you. And you're just like, So I want you to stay strong. Stay strong. And I want you to put that in the comments right now. Stay strong. You heard what they said, but you're staying strong, right? You're not taking the bait, staying strong. Number 4 is you're reading the other person's emotions and you're mirroring them. That kind of like throws them off their game too. You're like, oh, okay. Like you're kind of empathizing with them. You're like kind of there with them. That's really, really important to kind of like mirror them because you want to just let them know that you're kind of there with them. You're empathizing with them. You let them know you're feeling them. People want to know that they matter. They want to know, they want to feel seen, they want to feel heard, they want to know that they matter. All people want to feel valued. And no one is walking away, whatever their worst case scenario is. It's not happening. Okay? I mean, both sides are going to have to give a little here. They're going to have to feel like they're feeling seen and heard in this situation. So make sure you're reading their emotions. You kind of barter a little bit with this, okay? So that's number 4. Number 5 is you use my slay approach. Yes, you want to slay this negotiation. And how you slay the negotiation is you use my slay approach. Strategy, leverage, anticipate, and focus on you. You have to have a super strong strategy. You use invincible leverage. You anticipate what the narcissist is going to do and being 2 steps ahead of them. And you focus on you, your case, and your position. All right. Strategy. You have a super strong strategy, leverage, invincible leverage, especially with a narcissist. And remember, with a narcissist, you're focusing on their supply. I've got lots and lots of other videos on all that stuff. And you got to get my slay program to get the good stuff on that. Right. And number 6, really good psychological trick is always be ready to walk away. Always be ready to walk, because if you aren't, they know they have you, right? So let's talk about sneaky secrets that you can use in any negotiation, but especially against narcissists. And what I say is, if you can negotiate against narcissists, you can negotiate against anyone. And the bottom line is, when you're negotiating, all people want to feel like they've come away with some value. The thing is, no one's going to settle for their worst day. All people want to feel seen, heard, and acknowledged. And that's why my book, Negotiate Like You Matter, is called Negotiate Like You Matter. And matter is actually the acronym for my methodology in that book. And M stands for my value is defined by me, because you and you alone define your value. And value can be internal or external, meaning that you have internal value, which is whole and complete and fixed. We are all valuable as human beings. And then there's the external value, which is kind of defined by the market and all that sort of thing, based on your skills and how much experience you have and all that sort of thing. But as human beings, we are all intrinsically valuable. But there are certain sneaky negotiation secrets that we can use to kind of win any negotiation based on just how you approach a negotiation so that everybody feels like they're getting somewhere. Because if you want to get somewhere, you want to make sure that everybody is being acknowledged. So just thinking of it from that perspective, and especially when you're dealing with narcissists, because remember, they don't have any internal sense of value. They don't have that internal feeling that they have. They're trying to constantly layer it from the external. So you got to think about that as well. All right. So number one is start with areas where you might agree, and then work toward those more contested areas, the ones that are more hotly contested. And the reason why you do that is because that way you feel like you've got some common ground. That way you feel like you're building some momentum, like you're getting somewhere. Okay, we've already agreed on these things. Look, burn the bridge already. Why throw the whole thing away? Look at how much we've already gained. A lot of times, like, it's, oh wow, we've already agreed on 99% of everything. It's just these last couple of things. Why blow the whole deal on just these last couple of things? So you pretty much can like wrap it up because you've agreed on most everything else. So you start with areas of agreement, then you work up toward the more hotly contested areas. Okay, because that way you feel like you've gained a lot of ground, right? So that's number one. Number two is you let the other person start with the first offer. Sometimes that's a way of letting them feel like they've got some control, especially when you're dealing with narcissists, where you're dealing with somebody who is a more toxic or more volatile personality. It gives them some feeling like they got somewhere right out of the gate. And a lot of times, actually, it helps you because you get to see where they're coming from. You get to see what's most important to them. So you get to see where their cards are. It educates you. Honestly, it helps you. So let the other person start with the first offer. So that's number two. Let the other person start with the first offer. Let them have some control right out of the gate. That's number two. Number three is start with a whole lot more than you actually want. Now, this is kind of a tricky one though, because you also don't want to start with so much more that the other person goes, I'm out of here. That's ridiculous. If it's so offensive that the other person just thinks they're just wasting my time and they just are out of there, then you've totally blown the deal. So you have to be careful about how much a lot more is. I mean, obviously you want to ask for more than what you want, especially because sometimes people really do have to be beat up by the process. I think this is tough for people sometimes. They think, well, I'm just going to be reasonable right out of the gate. I just want to be done with this thing. Let me just show them that I'm being reasonable. Let me just show them that I'm giving up all this. And if I give up all of this right away, they're going to see how much I'm giving up. They're going to see how reasonable I am. And a lot of times, if you're dealing with a narcissist, they just take. And that just gets taken and they don't acknowledge that. And they just want to keep going with that. And that just gets shoved to the side and not even acknowledged at all. And you end up feeling frustrated and taken advantage of. I would just be very, very careful about that. I do have another whole video on psychological tricks to win any negotiation, especially against narcissists. And I would definitely check out my video on that. Number 4 is throw them off the scent of what you actually want. And especially with narcissists, because if you tell them what you actually want, they will definitely go directly for that. And especially just to get back at you. And again, check out my video on the psychological tricks to win any negotiation. So be careful about that. The bottom line is sometimes you just have to take your ego out of it, because they do just want to get back at you. And the thing is, you just want to get to a resolution. You just want to get to yes. And if you are a reasonable person, narcissists just want to jerk you around. They don't necessarily want to just get to yes. They just want to continue to manipulate you and see you squirm. If you're a reasonable person, you just want to get to yes. You just want to get this thing done. You just want to get to where you want to go. You just want to get to your goal. Winning is the goal, right? Or get to your wherever it is you want to go, so that you can move on with your life, right? So you want to get to yes. And if you agree with me, put yes in the comments right now. Okay. And the last thing is mirror their emotional body language so that they feel seen, heard, and valued. If they're feeling warm and they're kind of on the table and down like this and listening to you, you can do that too. If they're back like this and up and this way, you can do that too. Because when you kind of act the same way as somebody else and talking sort of similar to somebody else, they can feel that. They can psychologically feel that. And people want to be with people that are like them. And they feel more comfortable with people that are like them. And so when you're mirroring people's emotions and their body language, then they subliminally and psychologically feel more comfortable, and they actually start to feel more like, oh, I feel like we're in agreement. I feel comfortable with this person, and they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel acknowledged, they feel valued, and they feel more comfortable in coming to a resolution and agreement with you, which is what it is that you want. And remember, of course, if you do come to an agreement, to get it in writing, some kind of a writing, some kind of way of documenting that deal. Super, super important. So that's what I got for you. Sneaky negotiation secrets that you can use to win any negotiation. If you're paralyzed in negotiation conversations and you're just not sure what to say, maybe you're afraid of rejection, I have a simple 6-step foolproof method that will allow you to feel confident and powerful when you go into your negotiations. I've proven this method with thousands of clients, and now it's your turn to be in on the secrets. In order to win, both sides need to feel seen, heard, and feel like they matter. So your acronym is MATTER. You want to negotiate like you matter. MATTER. M stands for my value. My value is defined by me. The negotiation process is an inside-out process, meaning you start with the internal parts of yourself, and then you work outward toward preparation for that big day or that big conversation. So I always say that 80% of the negotiation happens before you even walk into the room. You start internally. Your value is defined by you. And I wanted to make sure that you understand that there is a difference between your internal value, which is whole and complete and inherent and infinite, and your external value, which I'll get into a little bit more in step 2. But just for now, remember that step 1 is my value is defined by me. Or as I like to say, you and you alone define your value. And remember that people will think what you tell them to think. So you need to communicate to them that you are valuable. Who out there wants to feel like I matter? Please put I matter in the comments so that I can see that and acknowledge you. Step 2 is A, which is analyze your research and create your arguments and your leverage. This is the next layer out. So remember, the first layer is your internal value. The second layer out is now you're going to build your external value. So this is going to be where you do your research, you create your arguments, you look at ways to create leverage. You're going to start figuring out what the other side's pain points are, what's going to motivate them, what is it that is going to get them to want to come to the table and have a conversation with you. And this is especially important to determine what the other side's arguments are going to be, because you're going to want to be ready to either speak to them or refute them, especially if the person is a narcissist. And that's a whole special category of their own. And if you are going to be dealing with somebody who is a narcissist, or you are dealing with someone who's a narcissist, I would encourage you to watch my other video, which I specifically spoke to how to deal with a narcissist. And I'll go ahead and put the link to that below the video here. But step 2 is analyze your research and create your arguments and your leverage. That's what the A is. Next up, step 3, which is the T. Step 3 is T. Remember, we're using the word matter as an acronym. So M-A-T. T stands for dress to a T, and then use powerful body language and words. Your clothes, the things that you wear, actually has a psychological impact on your brain. There's scientific proof that if you wear clothes that make you feel like $1 million, that you will feel more confident and more powerful. So make sure you put on that power suit, or you wear that power dress, or whatever it is that makes you feel amazing, because that's going to be important. The other thing is colors. So you want to wear certain colors that will communicate psychological message to the other person. If you want me to do a specific video just on colors, go ahead and drop a comment below and say colors, or colors please, something like that, so I know. Then you are going to want to use powerful body language and powerful words. And I can do some separate videos on those as well. But you want to make sure that you're doing things like a chin grab or a steepling, things like that, that make you feel, that make you look and seem more powerful. And you also want to read the other person's body language and make sure that you're reading it correctly as well. So step number 3 was T, dress to a T, and use powerful body language and words. We're halfway there. The next thing is step 4. And step 4 is the next T, which is tackle the hard issues second. Or the other way that I like to put it is start with areas that you might agree on and then work toward the more contested issues. Because you want to build momentum. You want to build a feeling of trust. You want the other person to start feeling like you value them. And I say this, even if you hate the other person's guts, even if you despise them and you detest every hair on their head, if you are having a conversation with them, then obviously there's something that you want from the other person. So if you want to get what you want, then you've got to acknowledge the other side and make them feel like they matter. So you're going to start with areas where you might agree, so you feel like you get that momentum going. And by the way, this is where you might pull out your leverage, because once you create that leverage, you want to use it at the very specific time that it's going to be optimum for you. And so here is where you may want to pull out what your leverage is. If, by the way, you are specifically going through a divorce and you're watching this video, I do have a different video just specifically on how to create leverage in divorce. And I will drop a link to that below as well. So make sure you check that out if that's your situation. So just remember that the second T in M-A-T-T-E-R stands for tackle the hard issues second. Next up is step 5. Step 5 is E. Keep your emotions in check. That's what E stands for. You're going to want to maintain control. It doesn't mean that you can't be passionate about your positions or your arguments, but by doing the work of the MATT coming before you, which means you've done your research, you've created your value internally, externally, you've done your preparations, you're going to be ready and your emotions will stay much more in check. The only reason why they go skidding out of control is when you feel like you're not really sure what it is that you're talking about, or that the other side isn't acknowledging you. But if you know your internal value, you don't have to worry about that as much. So E is keep your emotions in check. And we made it. Step 6. The last step is your R in matter, and R stands for, drumroll please, record your agreements in writing. This doesn't mean it has to be a formal contract, no signing in blood or anything like that. It could just be a follow-up text or email that says, hey, thanks for speaking with me, and here's what we agreed upon, or here's what we discussed. That way you eliminate any misunderstandings right away. So negotiate like you matter, M-A-T-T-E-R. I have a special gift for you. It's your little negotiation cheat sheet, so that you can remember each one of these steps in MATTER, and it's free, and it's in the link below. I'm dropping a link below.
Okay, so let's talk about the moment that a narcissist broke down in this deposition. So narcissists think that they can control everything in depositions. They believe that they can talk their way out of any situation. But when you ask the right question, their mask crumbles. It just falls off. And here's exactly what happened. This narcissist thought that they could win. And by the way, I've dealt with them in opposing counsel too, like awful. But in this particular situation, it was the opposing client. And what they were trying to do, they were using word games to avoid answering any questions, any direct questions. They were acting overly confident and trying to make it seem like we had no case. They were talking in circles, hoping to confuse me and trying to wear me down. This person didn't expect is that I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to try to trap them, because in a deposition, you just want to let them talk, right? You just want to let them lie. You want to let them go, because I knew that this person was going to contradict themselves. So I had the perfect question ready to go. All right. So you know what they do in depositions? They act smug. And by the way, you always want to do a video deposition. It's only a few $100s more. You always want the video in a deposition, okay? Because you want this so that the judge can see this down the road if necessary, okay? They think that they have control until they hear this one question, and then everything changes. All right. So the question is, can you explain that again? And here's why it works. Because a narcissist lies. They lie so much that they cannot keep track of their own stories. They improvise instead of sticking to the facts. So when you make them repeat themselves, they panic because they have to end up contradicting themselves. They end up telling different versions of their story. They try to repeat their answer, but then they end up changing key details. And then I ask the question again and again. This time their frustration starts to show. The opposing attorney started noticing the contradictions, and then the opposing attorney tries to object, but they can't object in a deposition. The only thing they can object to is if there's a criminal situation or if it's completely irrelevant. In a deposition, you can ask anything that's going to potentially lead to something that's going to be relevant at trial. So they can continue to answer the question. So they completely get it unraveled. They raise their voice, they start sweating, they get defensive, and it shows how unreliable their testimony is. And by the way, this is all under oath. So then when you get to trial, you can bring this out, and you can ask the same questions again at trial, by the way, and then show how their answers don't match up, right? So the lies are not going to survive. They don't survive repetition. Lies do not survive repetition. Have you ever met somebody, they started off to be the most charming, charismatic person you've ever met in your life, then they turned out to be your worst nightmare, and then when you go to negotiate with them, they're a living hell? Well, I developed something called the SLAY method of negotiating with narcissists, and it has helped tens of thousands of people in more than 150 countries win, go from feeling drained and defeated to getting the outcomes they want. And the reason why it works is because I spent more than 20 years studying narcissism as a trial attorney, and now I'm here to help you win too, and also take your suffering and turn it into your superpower. Take your pain and turn it into profit, peace, and purpose as a highly specialized, high conflict negotiation coach. If you want to learn how to do it, then just go to RebeccaZung.com/apply, and I will show you how. Have you ever caught a narcissist in lies? I want to know this in the comments. Give me a great big totally in the comments below. So why does this question work on every single narcissist? Because narcissists rely on control, and this takes it away. They expect you to argue. They want you to be arguing with them. Instead, you just make them talk. They get tangled up in their own web of lies. The more you let them speak, the more they expose themselves. So they just ramble, they contradict themselves. You're over there, you just stay silent. You let them self-destruct. Remember, silence is the real power move when it comes to narcissists. And by the way, if you want phrases for disarming narcissists, just get my phrases for disarming narcissists at disarmthenarc.com. What happens when you use this question? Number one, obviously, potential rage. They get angry, defensive. You stay out of the way when that happens. Don't step in with that. Don't try to engage with rage. Don't engage with rage. Never engage with rage. You just let that go. Number two, fake innocence. You know, I always call it the pearl grabbers. What? Me? What? How could you accuse me of that? What? Fake innocence. They act confused or insulted that you don't trust them. Number three is backpedaling. They start changing their answers. What I meant was this. You took that out of context. Oh, you were trying to frame me. This all just proves that they were lying. Okay? No matter what, you just stay calm. You just let them self-destruct. You just let them say whatever. You just show the differences in their answers. Oh, the first time I asked them, this was their answer. The second time we asked, this was their answer. The third time they were asked, this was their answer. Which is it? Predictable patterns, same results. So recap, how to expose a narcissist in depositions. Number one, let them talk in contradiction. Number two, ask, can you explain that again? Number three, watch as they panic and unravel. And number four, stay silent. Let their words destroy them. Once you know their game, you get to control the conversation. You don't have to argue with that narcissist. You don't have to prove them wrong. And now you know the one question that can make anyone break down on their own, any narcissist break down on their own. And if this video helped you, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that share button, and hit that notification bell. I have so many more powerful legal strategies coming your way. You don't want to miss one single one. You did. Well, but you know, one of the opening lines of my podcast is sometimes the very first negotiation that you have to do in the morning is with your own self for your own self-worth. And, you know, that is one of the things that you said that you had to overcome. And, you know, I want to know, do you agree with that? What do you think about mindset when it comes to negotiation or dealing with your day?
Man, mindset's been, I agree with it 100%. I am a small town kid, and I think that sometimes growing up in a small town can make you small-minded. I think that sometimes growing up in a small town, I encourage people these days. I say, you know, just because you have a small YouTube channel, you still need to dream big. But that's hard because sometimes your circumstances don't fully align with your vision, but your circumstances can make you think smaller. They can constrain your life. So how do you expand your mindset? How do you? There's been some influential things along the way, different mentors. Early on, there's a guy named Dr. Dave Martin. I did kind of a millionaire mindset program, and actually incredibly helpful, you know, and to, you know, sometimes I think even that can get criticism. Because people go, okay, you know, can you really think and grow rich? And you're like, well, technically, no, you know, because you do actually have to execute, but officially, absolutely, because it's going to have to start with your thinking. So if you can change your thinking, you could truly change your life. And so there was some early stuff. I think one of the other big things for me was I discovered a book by Hal Elrod called The Miracle Morning. And I started to change my mornings, realizing that if you can slay the morning, you could slay all day. And if you can wake up, I've heard some people call it a prize fighter's morning routine. And I have absolutely learned. I think that some of maybe my fans or people who watch our content maybe doubt that I deal with insecurity, self-doubt, negative thinking, discouragement, depression at times, and that sometimes it's a daily battle, and that waking up, having practices to get into the right state, the right mindset, but the right emotional state are essential. As a person of faith, there's a verse that says David encouraged himself in the Lord. And so there is something about learning how to encourage yourself, how to shift your perspective, shift your mindset. And Hal teaches in that book, he just collected practices like scribing, journaling, meditation, silence, reading, a little bit of movement and breathing, not intense exercise, but a little bit of exercise. And so I've adapted a lot of those things. And then there's another book called The Big Leap that talks about the upper limit, and that we will hit. Our mindset can also be like a thermostat, right? Where or our environment around us, it's like the lottery winner, that you won the millions of dollars, but you didn't change your mindset, your belief system, your operating system. And so you found your way back to being broke again, because you hit an upper limit, your money limitations, your self-worth limitations. You didn't know how to steward it. You didn't know how to manage it. So my awareness of discovering some of these signposts along the way, and then the implementation of trying to not just one time, in a way, reinventing myself, but having to continually do it. And now every year in our company, thank God, it's kind of like mo money, mo problems. And it's nice. It's a nice problem to have, but there's whole new limits. Like, what does it mean to actually now, what leader do I need to be for a team of this size? What kind of leader do I need to be to run a team of this size? And also now be a father of a 3-year-old or 1-year-old. What kind of husband do I need to be? And even as we speak, dealing with stuff that I'm seeing coming up, and my wife and I are in counseling and dealing with stuff where I'm realizing as now I'm having kids, and stuff starts coming out of maybe from my childhood that I didn't even realize. So I agree with you. I think it's a constant work in progress. The Jim Rohn may have been famous for saying the quote of something like, working on doing well at your job will make a living, but like working on yourself make a fortune. Personal development, I don't know, self-development. And so I've always been a big investor in self-development and things that can build up my mindset, negotiate with myself, and get my mind right. A lot of days it starts wrong. So I'll go through a practice to kind of get into the right place, think about what meetings I have ahead. And that's what leaders do.
Oh, so much gold in what you just said. So much gold. I was like trying to take notes on the books and things that you were talking about. I always say that I have so much respect for what you just said about you and your wife, because I always say that in every relationship, whether it's you and your spouse or anybody that you're with, that there's always 4 people in a relationship. And that is your true selves, you and the other person's true self, which is the one from God, which is the one that was created by God, which is perfect and whole and from love, right? And then there's the trauma selves, right? And so there's the four people, really. And it's in any given moment, there's who's going to show up in that relationship, who's going to speak, who's going to dominate, who's going to respond, who's going to act, who's going to interact, who's going to react. And then, you know, when that happens, you know, then that other person also has that, you know, in that gap after that other person has spoken, there's that moment of how is that other person going to respond and who's going to show up? Is it going to be that true self, the one that was, you know, created by God, or is it going to be the trauma self? Because the trauma self wants to go, you know, I'm going to say something hurtful and I'm going to, right? Because the trauma self was created in a moment of childhood to protect and defend and survive, and says things that are hurtful and never usually does things that are really good for anybody. But, you know, and at the end of the day, they think that they're protecting. And by the time, you know, you're an adult, you have to look and you have to acknowledge that trauma self and say, thank you for your service. But I appreciate you, but I don't think I need you anymore. And you're not helping me anymore. You know?
Yeah, no, that's very powerful. And I know I'm 40 years old, but you start realizing, man, we're a work in progress. But that's our wife and I, my wife and I are very passionate about counseling. We've done it over the years. We've gone years without it. But I'm a big believer in, you know, in athletics and in sports. Not all amateurs have coaches, but all professionals do. And the highest level athletes have multiple coaches.
Yeah.
So thinking about if we want to have a world-class marriage, and we're in business together. So we co-own the business and we're running it as it grows and gets complex, and you deal with other personalities and all this different stuff. And we have different gift sets. So it adds a whole nother layer of pressure and challenges to navigate. And you add in running a business together, and you then add in the kids, and then you add in your trauma selves. And so we need coaches.
My husband and I used to have our law practice together, and, you know, it was like, you could never get away from work either.
Sure.
You know, you're at your anniversary dinner and you're talking about, you know, work stuff.
We were. That is exactly. We actually at my birthday, just the two of us at Bellagio. We went to the Sphere in Las Vegas, went to some nice meals, and ended up having, among other many magical and memorable moments, also a couple long conversations about like our event next year and our speakers. And
yeah, and it's like, okay, we got to not do this, right? You can't be talking to clients or whatever it is. And yeah, I mean, it can be that way. And so you've also dealt with some difficult people, some narcissistic people in work situations that have been pretty traumatic for you.
Yes.
So, and I think some of our listeners can definitely identify with that. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, we dealt with, you know, we've had a lot of different people now work at Think Media. We've learned different things along the way. And I think actually I learned from you the term covert narcissist. I had heard the term narcissist, but I probably had never had a conversation about it. I wouldn't know how to define it. And so I kind of learned that if you don't really know what you're looking for, it's a little bit harder to spot. I also think that probably one of the most challenging things for me to work through growing my business was generally I lean towards being passive. My biological father was is kind of naturally passive, very charismatic, kind, very always like kind of socially wants to be liked. I know that's also like I want to be liked. So one of the struggles over the years was like shying away from difficult conversations, crucial conversations in general. And so one of the things we learned at our company is we have had, people come and work here, and I've had to learn to address difficult situations and have crucial conversations. And so that was a big piece. I think then the other piece was what was your work. In fact, I stumbled over an Instagram of you talking about narcissists, and I started being like, wow. And it was almost like whether wool was pulled over my eyes, and I feel somewhat complicit because maybe I allowed it. But even I started seeing like sometimes that's sort of part of the magic that kind of surrounds them, is you sort of get tricked, you gaslighting or whatever, you kind of like, is it me? Like, it's probably my fault. Like, I don't know. Like, and so it was a really bumpy season. And as we were kind of figuring things out and what it equipped me in, I'm happy to, talk about whatever else you want and we could go deeper. But one of the flip side is, again, you have, even my wife and I are running this company, small town kid, college dropout, and dealing with different personalities, team scaling, learning how these are like some of the skill sets. Even, by the way, the hiring process, because sort of like as teams are growing early on in a business, it's like, are you alive and willing? All right, you're hired, like it's, that's like your system. And thus you're not as seasoned, nor do you have as many tools. And then even learning and continuing to study things like culture. And what's interesting is, in hindsight, I could have probably seen the signs more, but I also realized that sometimes we definitely have blind spots, or that if someone's producing, that could be one big thing. Like, well, but if they're producing, or maybe they're even like actually hitting like generally their targets in terms of, or maybe even beyond, but obviously toxic to the culture and now verifiable from multiple accounts and multiple other people. And maybe they treat you a particular way, but there's ways they've treated other people, which is now not only verifiable, but seen over time. And if you're still turning a blind eye to it, that was some of the stuff I had to deal with as a leader, was thinking about, you have to address situations eventually. Of course, and that no team member is worth any amount of money if you lose culture. They're not worth, no, but it doesn't matter how good or how skilled they are. This is where I am now, is that the right behaviors, organizational health trumps everything. Our team directors now, we just read The Advantage this year by Patrick Lencioni. Subtitle is Organizational Health Trumps Everything. And going through being able to have crucial radical transparency on the leadership team, being able to call each other out. One of the ways we kind of learned is that people who are uncall-outable or get offended or fluff up if they get called out on issues or whatever, get mean or get just different, it happens once, maybe I'll start as a bad day. If it's a pattern, like you got to go. And so we have now, ultimately, I try to stay grateful at all times, always. And I also want to take ownership for all of my mistakes, because there's consequences to me abdicating leadership at any point on the journey too, or being passive. That's a failure in my role. I have to be active, assertive, and make the decisions and the hard conversations and address things quick. But my gratitude is, it's all learning, and it's made me better for the next time and given me more of a lens of what to look for. As we've been defining our culture and our core values at our company, one of the most helpful things to define our core values was awareness of seeing what we didn't like. I've actually said we almost didn't know how to define it because, well, the three of us work good together. Like early days, you have like an early team, like it just works. Like we don't have core values. There's no core values written down. We're just working. But then when you introduce, I think it's like when you introduce poison, then it acts, oh, now we're experiencing poison. Like we actually are experiencing it. It's easier to define. It's easier to see. It's maybe what do you want in your culture would be one list to write down. What do you want your family to be like? What are your family's core values? What are the non-negotiables? What are at Thanksgiving? What's acceptable in my house? As soon as we had our own house, I used to be passive, let my parents, whatever, in-laws, they say and do whatever. Now I realize I'm the man of the house. Oh, you're going to talk to my wife that way? That's cool. I don't care who you are. This is our family. We're a whole new unit. That's unacceptable. You could either stop that right now, or we're totally fine without you, because right behavior health is the standard here. I don't control what you do in your own home. I'm not even necessarily judging you, but that's not going to fly here. And so growing to set strong boundaries, to define what health looks like, and then to enforce that. And then fast forward, I also hope that our hiring is a little bit better. We use tools like predictive index and some different personality assessments. And we try to use a combination of them all, try to have a hire of a couple different people, talk to them, and I eventually talk to them. And then we're aware that you never really know until you know. I'm sure many people listening to this are like, yeah, they seem good on the dates for a while. You definitely need a few dates. You definitely need a few weeks, a few months, who knows how long before people's true colors can kind of come up, in variety of situations and pressure to expose different issues that people can have. And so I'm not expecting us to bat 100, but we've gotten better. And we've gotten better from learning from different personality types and different challenges that we've had over the years. And it's helped us get crystal clear on how important organizational health is for us. And I think culture trumps everything. Culture eats vision for lunch. Doesn't matter how good your vision is. Doesn't matter how good your talent is. Culture will kill the whole thing if culture is toxic.